Hello friends, let us deal with some basic grammar lessons today. I am going to talk to you about the verb. All of you know what a verb is. If you are asked what is a verb, you would immediately say that a verb is a doing word. Yes, a verb is a doing word. You call it a doing word. Just like if somebody asks you what is a noun, you would say it's a naming word, because a noun gives the name of a person, a place, or a thing. So a verb is a doing word because it denotes some kind of an action. A verb does not always denote an action. It can also denote a state of being. And a verb is what tells you what the subject in a sentence or a clause is doing or is being. The verb is the most important part of the sentence. A verb can express an idea all by itself. Now suppose I say run. That one verb itself makes the whole sentence. You understand the meaning of what it means, run. It implies there the subject is there, but the subject is implied. You run. But the word run alone is enough. And again you can say stop. So that alone conveys the whole meaning. So that is why I said that the verb is a very important part, or it is the most important part of the sentence. Now what are the various forms of the verb? You have the base form of a verb or the present tense form. Like for example, when I say begin or eat, these are the base forms of those verbs. So the base form. And then you have a past tense form. That is when you want to talk about something that happened in the past, you would use the past tense form of this verb. So eat would become ate. So that is the past tense form. Then you have the past participle form, the third form of the verb. Eat is the base form, ate is the past tense form, eaten would be the past participle. Begin, base form, began, past tense form, and begun would be the past participle form. Okay, now you also have the present participle form where you have the ing, like you would say beginning or eating. That is what you would call the present participle. And you also have the to infinitive form where you add a to begin, to eat. So these are the various forms of a verb. Then what are the different types of a verb? You must have heard of different types of verb. I'll give you a few that I have here. We have action and non-action verbs. We have strong and weak verbs, regular and irregular verbs, transitive and intransitive verbs, finite and non-finite verbs. Now what are all these different types of verbs? Let us look at them one by one. Let us take action verbs and non-action verbs. An action verb, as the name indicates, is a verb that indicates action. For example, when I say Ramakant plays football, their plays is the action verb because it denotes action. Maria ran towards her mother. Their ran is the action verb. Very simple. Verbs that show or express or denote some kind of an action, you simply call them action verbs. Then what are non-action verbs? Those are verbs that indicate a state of being or a sense or an emotion or a possession, opinion or desire. Okay, these are called non-action verbs. As in when I say Ishan is a clever boy, there is a state of being. Okay, so you don't have any loud action there, but then is a state of being. That is a non-action verb. Then an emotion, it can express an emotion, as in the sentence I feel safe here. So feel, there again you don't have loud action, but feel is a non-action verb. Sandeep has many good friends. So has, that again is a non-action verb. He wants to make money. wants, it expresses desire. So that again is a non-action verb. So when we say verbs, it doesn't really have to be very, as I say, loud actions like running or jumping. Even these quiet actions too can be denoted by verbs. So that is about the first category called action and non-action verbs. Now let us go on to the second category, weak verbs and strong verbs. Now to decide which verb is weak and which is strong, we have to first look at how the verb forms its past tense. I told you about the base form and the past tense form. So depending on how a verb goes to the past tense, it forms its past tense. Depending on that, you classify verbs as strong and weak. Let me give you examples of verbs. For instance, you have the verb eat again as the example. Eat. How does eat form its past tense? There is a vowel change. You don't have any additional words, but then there is an internal kind of an adjustment and a vowel is replaced. So eat, E-A-T-T, E-A-T, eat becomes A-T-E, ate. And or if you take the example of the verb sing, how does sing become the past tense form? It becomes sang. Okay, so I, the vowel is changed and instead you put A there. So there is an internal vowel change, but the number of the verb remains the same. There is no addition, there is a kind of replacement. So such verbs, so this is one way in which verbs change into the past tense. Another method is, for some verbs, you have to add an ed to make the past tense. Like for example, walk plus ed, walked becomes the past tense. Laugh plus ed, laughed. That is how you make the past tense. So now let us look at which among these are strong and which are weak. Now I would say that the verbs that take ed, or the verbs that have to need the help of somebody from outside because they cannot stand on their own. The past tense, it needs the support of two people from outside, ed, or it needs the support of another verb, t. For example, keep becomes kept. So you need help from outside. So such verbs, to remember it more easily, such verbs we can call weak verbs. And why are they weak? Because they need external help. They need two people or maybe one person to come from outside and give them support. They cannot stand on their own. They need somebody to support them. And such verbs are called weak verbs. What about the strong ones? Eat is a strong verb. Sing and the past tense, sang. So sing is a strong verb. Why? Because they, of course, there was a replacement, but then they did not borrow anybody from outside. They kind of managed on their own. They gave something from here, took something from there. And so they are strong enough to manage on their own. And so they are the strong verbs. That is one easy way to remember. This is, I think, something that maybe my teacher must have told me when I was a kid. I don't know, it has just stayed in my mind, and it has always helped me to differentiate between strong verbs and weak verbs. Strong verbs are verbs that can manage on their own without the help of an ed, without the help of a crutches from outside. Whereas weak verbs are the ones that need help from outside. So all the verbs that take an ed or a t to form the past tense, they are all weak. Whereas all the verbs that can manage on their own, like for example, run, ran, sing, sang, give, gave, all these are strong because they can manage very well on their own. Okay, and we also have verbs like put. The past tense of put again is put. Cut, cut. They don't change at all. They too are categorized as strong verbs. So hope that is clear, and though the story might seem quite silly, it definitely will help you to remember the difference between the two. Okay, so that is about strong and weak verbs. Now we are going on to the next category, regular verbs and irregular verbs. We are talking about the same thing, the strong and the weak, only thing the names are different. Now, regular verbs are those that form the past tense in a regular pattern. All the verbs that form their past tense with ed are regular because they form a uniform pattern. Always add ed, you get the past tense. Laugh plus ed, you get the past tense, laughed. What else? Talk plus ed, you get talked. Okay. Stop plus stop, of course, needs another p also, plus ed. For the past tense you need an ed. So that also, all these verbs which follow a regular pattern of adding ed or t, those are all called regular. So looking at it that way, all the weak verbs are actually regular verbs, and the irregular verbs are the ones that don't follow a regular pattern, because you cannot say like sing forms the past tense as sang and eat forms the past tense ate. These are all, the pattern is different. Though they make internal vowel changes, you cannot say that it's not as regular as adding an ed. So they are all the other verbs which do not take ed are all called irregular verbs, including verbs like put, cut, which do not change. They are also termed as or classified as irregular verbs. So the strong verbs are the irregular verbs and the weak verbs are the regular verbs. So now we have gone through the third category, and the next is an important category, transitive verbs and intransitive verbs. Now what is a transitive verb? A transitive verb is a verb that needs an object to convey complete meaning. It necessarily has to transfer the action from the subject onto an object. Only then the sentence will become complete. Such verbs which transfer or in which there is a movement, transit means moving, movement. So verbs which necessitate the movement of the action from the subject to the object, they are called transitive verbs. Example, if I simply tell you Wafa started, and then you would want to know Wafa started what? And then you have to complete the sentence saying Wafa started a new business. So started there is a transitive verb because you need to fill in something to make the complete sense. Again, if I say the boy tore, T-O-R-E, okay, the boy tore. So again you would ask, what did he tear? And you have to say the boy tore the book. Only then the meaning becomes complete. So there again you can see the action moving, or there is a transfer of the action from here, from the subject to the object. I love. So you say what? You love what? So I would say I love books. I love chocolates, whatever. So there too you can see the action is transferred. Then so the transitive verbs are verbs, as I told you, where action is transferred from one to the other, and again the transitive verb always affects something else. It affects the object. Okay, so that is what you should remember about transitive verbs. People often get worried about the transitive and intransitive verbs. This is all that you have to remember. In a transitive verb, there is a movement. There is a transfer of action of something from here to there. Okay, so that is transitive verb. And now intransitive verbs, of course, if you know transitive, you know what is intransitive, because intransitive verbs do not need an object. There is no transfer of action. They make complete sense even without an object. Like for example, I slept. The meaning is complete. You don't have to write something after that slept. Neha cried. Okay, there again, it's fine. The meaning is fully conveyed. The bell rang. The dog barked. So in all these verbs, you can see the verb doesn't need an object. The action need not be transferred. So these are called intransitive verbs. Some verbs can belong to both categories. You can use them as transitive verbs and as intransitive. Now let me give you an example. The bell rang. So there, rang is an intransitive verb because the action doesn't go that side. The bell rang. The meaning is complete. Whereas I can also use the same verb and say Ramesh rang the bell. So what happens there? There, rang is a transitive verb. And why is it transitive? Because the action rang is transferred from the subject Ramesh to the bell. So there, the verb rang acts as a transitive verb. Another example. After the party, he left. After the party, he left. So left, the sentence ends with that, and there you can see the action doesn't. Left is the verb there. It is intransitive because you don't have to transfer the action. Whereas when I say this sentence, he left his purse in the car. So there you can see he did something. What did he do? He left what? His purse in the car. So there you can see a transfer of action. So that is transitive sentence. So here you should also remember this, that sometimes some verbs can be used both as transitive and intransitive. Not all verbs, some verbs can be used as both transitive and intransitive. So I hope that is clear about the difference between transitive verbs and intransitive. Just remember that there is a transit, there is a transfer of movement from this to that. And then the next category, or the last one I would be mentioning here, would be finite verbs and non-finite verbs. Now, finite verbs are verbs that are, do you know the meaning of finite? Finite means limited. Non-finite means unlimited. So finite verbs are limited. They are limited by what? They are limited by the tense of the sentence. They are limited by the number of the subject, whether the subject is singular or plural. The finite verb is affected by that. Whether the sentence is in past tense or present tense or future tense, the finite verb is affected by that. So it is limited. It is controlled by tense and number. And finite verbs always occur as main verbs in a sentence. Let me give you an example. When I say, I live in Mysore. I live in Mysore. And there, live is a finite verb. It's the main verb. The main verb of the sentence is live. And I live in Mysore. Now, if I change this sentence and if I make the subject she, what would happen to live? She lives in Mysore. So there you can see that the change in the subject has created a change in the verb. That is why we call it the finite verb, because it is limited, it is controlled by the subject. And by the according to the change in the subject, this also changes. Again, suppose if I want to change the tense, I am living in Mysore. There what happens? So there it is the continuous tense, and what happens to the verb live? It becomes am living, because you want to convey another tense. So such verbs that are limited by number and tense, and such verbs that occur as the main verbs of the sentence, they are called finite verbs. And the non-finite verbs, on the other hand, are not affected by the number or the tense in a sentence. And the non-finite verb does not come as the main verb in the sentence too. Example, I try to improve my English. To improve is the non-finite verb. Okay, I try to improve my English. What is the main verb in that sentence, or what is the finite verb in that sentence? Try. I try to improve my English. Let me let me change the subject. She tries to improve her English. So what happened? Which verb changed? Try changed. Why did try change? Because it is a finite verb. It is the main verb, and it will be affected by what happens to the subject. So when the subject changed from I to she, the main verb or the finite verb try also changed along with it, and try became tries. Whereas, did anything happen to improve? No. She tries to improve her English. To improve remains the same. Whether you say I try to improve my English or she tries to improve her English, they are trying to improve their English. The non-finite verb does not change. That is why you call it non-finite. Okay, so that is the difference between finite and non-finite verbs. And so I will also give you an exercise so that you can just work out, just see whether you can find out the difference between these sentences. So that is all. These are all the various categories of the verb, and the most difficult ones, generally people find it difficult to distinguish between transitive and intransitive. So I guess it's quite simple. Once you try to understand the difference, it is quite simple. So please try out the sentences that I will be providing after this, and also try working out sentences on your own. You have ample material available on the net where you can polish and hone your grammatical skills. So please try them. If you really want to improve your English, if you're really trying to improve your English, you should do a lot of work on your own. So hope this has helped you.